Segment 2, Gold and Black Live. It's always good to be next to a legend. I get to the next two segments. Todd Foster's a legend too. So, but so is Mark Herrmann, and we're glad to have Mark with us. And Mark, you're almost a regular on the show. You've been with us the last couple of years. Purdue and Iowa. I mean, your great career at Purdue. That was one team that you had. Certainly, your game as a senior in 1980, one of the great games. But there's really some great storylines in terms of where Purdue football, where college football is now, really started in that 1977 game, Purdue-Iowa. Tell the story about how the shotgun came about, and that was the first game that I believe that ever happened.
Yeah, I think it was something that we kind of threw around a little bit just to be able to give me a little more time back there and just kind of give a different look. And a lot of times we would line up behind center and then shift back, and then the crowd get all excited. And I wouldn't just go back to 5. It was like 8 yards. It was almost like a short punt kind of thing. And Pete just did a great job, Pete Quinn. And I remember people marveled at his ability to 8 yards to put it on the money every time. So it was, kind of a gimmicky thing, but it had some real function to it that we really felt like we were at the point where we were able to spread the field a little bit more, use Dave Young a little bit more and some spread formations, and then just be able to sit back there and get a quick view of the defense and not worry about play action, but just be able to kind of read the defense a little bit and go to the proper receiver. So it ended up really being, pretty revolutionary in college football, but very effective. And we went on to really put some yards.
And it was in that first game. I think I always mess this up. You had 4 touchdowns to Reggie Arnold, and then but you had 5 for the game, or was it? And a 34-21 win over Iowa. Then in 78 you go to Iowa, and really some good things were happening in the 78 season. Obviously with the start of the win of the being in Michigan State, but you had 2 television games in a row, which was rare in those days. Go to Illinois and I think shut them out, I believe it was, and then Iowa too the following week and beat them badly. Just the whole idea, what was it like for you guys? Because I can remember even as a freshman getting on playing, I think your only televised game was against Northwestern, if I want to say. But What was it like then compared to now? I mean, in fact, when you knew a game was going to be on ABC, was it? Did you guys think much about that, and any more than probably more than they do now, just because it was a rarity?
Yeah, I mean, it was a little something special, as you mentioned. Not many games were on TV, and it was always that 1:30 start and 1:30 kickoff. And but this, Dad, you had some pregame interviews and some special notice during the week, so you could feel that there was a little something special with the game. And fortunately, we went out and played really well. We went up to Iowa City, and like you said, for whatever reason, we matched up very well with the Hawkeyes, and we just seemed to push the ball down the field and got some big plays. And they had solid teams, but we just and this was at the end of 20 straight years that we'd beaten the Hawkeyes. So those back-to-back games, being on TV and playing well, people forget that we really had a very good defense that 78 year, and then in the 79 and 80 that we really had a foundation of good players, good scheme, the junk defense, and some really underrated players that did a great job. So combining those two things, we really felt we had something special. And Iowa City, our sophomore year, and then we went right back our junior year.
One of the toughest games.
Had a dogfight. I mean, physical game. Mike Harris broke his jaw early in the game.
By Bob Stoops,
Bob
right?
Stoops, yes, absolutely.
Coach of Oklahoma.
Yeah, so that was a survival game. It was 20-14, I think, the final, and we just hammered it out and just, we're fortunate to come away with a victory that year, and so that set up for our senior year, which was a lot of fireworks.
Yeah, the 79 game really was interesting because that was Hayden Fry's first year, and I can remember I actually went to that game, made the trip as a college student out there, but they had come in with the all new logo and everything that he had done. And he might be if you're going to put a recipe of how to turn a program around from just an image standpoint, nobody did it better than Hayden Fry did in terms of changing the mindset. And of course, by the year after you graduated, 1981, they find themselves in the Rose Bowl. So it was an amazing environment. I can just remember that as well.
Yeah, it was, and he did do a marvelous job. Iowa was pretty vanilla before he got there, just a little bit of passing, tried to run and play physical defense, but he kind of opened things up, stood up the tight ends.
Yeah,
and,
the old Pittsburgh Steelers type deal
right,
to
right.
some extent.
So yeah, we laid a pretty good number on him in our senior year and put like 55 or 58.
58,
yeah, and then. Yeah, from then on, Hayden Fry and the Hawkeyes really found their groove and really started kind of to tilt the rivalry back towards the Hawkeye side.
Yeah, 20 years in a row Purdue won at 61 to Mark's senior year in 80, and then it turned. It's really since then has turned the other way. Purdue's had a hard time winning a lot of games against the Hawkeyes. Okay, you watch it, and your day job, of course, is in development with the Cranert School. So that puts you on campus, which I know that makes Purdue fans and Purdue people happy. But you've always watched Purdue football closely. Been tough, certainly, the last several years in terms of watching this teams not be as successful as you'd like to be. But you watch quarterbacks, and David Blough has shows some good things. What's your evaluation of him at this point?
Yeah, I do like David. I think he's a competitor. We know that. I do think he has some skills, and he can throw the football, and he's got some athletic ability. It's just all about continuing to grow every week. It's hard. I played my freshman year, and it's just everything's thrust upon you, and you're trying to do maybe a little bit too much at times, but you've got to be surrounded by guys that enable you to succeed. And I took my lumps, and I joked that I was probably the leading tackler my freshman year because I had so many interceptions.
That's right.
But you've got to just learn by doing, and don't be afraid of making a mistake. And I think David's got to figure that out. But they just need some success, and I think we saw a glimpse against Nebraska that he can do some things running and throwing the football. It's just maintaining that consistency and then being able to, have an entire game where you're able to make plays. And it's coming, but it's not as soon as a lot of Purdue fans would like.
Playing in inclement weather, and we actually put something on our site today, the games that I remembered that were extra cold and nasty. You played in, I think, in 78 up at Michigan, and 80 very cold days, but no snow, as I recall. Have you had, even in your pro days, any days where you've played in snowstorms that you can recall?
Yeah, when I was with the Chargers, we actually flew into Denver, and they had closed the airport for everybody but us. Our charter came and landed, and I was hoping, because I was starting the next day against the Broncos, and I was hoping that the storm would clear out. When I woke up, pulled the shades, and it's blowing sideways, snowing like crazy. And it was one of those games where they're shoveling the yard markers in between possessions. And so, yeah, it's tough. And I mean, it's hard to do your drop back. It's hard to grip the football. We talked about using, the gloves like a lot of quarterbacks use today, but you just really never get a good feel for the football, and it's tough. And guys coming out of their routes are not as crisp, and so the timing issues get off a little bit. So it's a challenge. The one thing that I hated the worst of being a quarterback was wind.
Yeah.
I didn't mind rain so much because you can relatively keep the balls dry, but wind is such a variable, either against it or with it, that it really messes with your ability to throw it. So you try to gauge going into it, and if you have a little wobble on the football, it really enhances it, and you may overthrow with the wind. So that, more than anything, kind of messes with your psyche as a quarterback.
How much is it, too? It just seems to me, and this is maybe a challenge for Purdue tomorrow, just because Iowa has so much to play for. They are at home and all this kind of stuff, but you got to have and this is speaking almost as a non-football guy or football player, you got to have want to. You got to want to be there in that weather too, and it's easy, I think, to mentally check out. I mean, is that you buy in that theory that it's got to takes a lot of discipline to keep your head in the game in those types of situations?
Well, if you love to compete, you can withstand any conditions. It's just like if you go out in the backyard and during Thanksgiving, and it's kind of snowy and nasty, but it's fun. You're just bouncing around, you're trying to get warm quickly. And so I think, guys, especially the defensive guys, enjoy it. They love the elements and all that kind of thing. Skilled people, not so much, but still, you're going to be dealt some games where it's less than ideal conditions, and that mental toughness, that discipline comes to the forefront, and that's where a head coach can really get the attention of his team to say, hey, we can separate ourselves today. We're not going to let these outside influences take care of what we want to do. So fight through it. We're not going to talk about the elements. We've got a game plan to execute, and you go out and do it.
You look at quarterbacks, and obviously from you leaving Purdue in a day, somebody pointed out on our message boards today, the day that you broke the record against Michigan State, which was in October. There was actually some snow in that game, but it didn't last for long. I kind of came in for it. It was a freezing cold game, as I recall.
It was
the memory of that game and just and getting that record and having a tussle against a Michigan State team that was close and down the stretch.
Well, we mentioned Iowa being a good matchup. Michigan State was always a tough matchup.
Yeah.
They were physical and really they had great athletes, and that was a battle. And I remember getting that record. It was a cold, blustery kind of damn crummy day. And I wasn't playing particularly well at that point, and I did get that completion. I run over to hand the game ball, and Coach Young said, "We'll start playing now. It's time. You got to step it up." And so, I got the message quickly, and we pulled away and won that football game. But that was a tussle. But Big Ten football, there are barely any days off. It's usually a physical battle, and it's all about the fortitude and toughness, pulling it out. So.
Well, Jim Young is one of my all-time favorites, just because of his philosophy of how his mental approach to the game. He's the kind of guy that, and I obviously haven't been around him near as many times as you have, but just interesting person of how he approaches things. He still does it, I think, to this day. Just a very, very cerebral guy that has studied not only all different types of things to make him the person he is. I love the story in your senior year, 1980, a little bit earlier in the year. You're struggling, I think it was against Miami or Minnesota, and the coach, obviously he was not beyond taking you out of a football game, or at least talking about that. But then tell us the story about how that came to pass, that you'd thrown a pick or two, and he basically said, well, you call the plays, and he did that. Tell us that story.
It was early in the season, Miami of Ohio,
Right.
and I had struggled. It was one of those games that the ball was bouncing, and they made some interceptions, and I threw some poor balls, and Coach Young, he said, I'm seriously thinking about taking you out, and he said, but I'm going to do this. I'm going to say, this next series, you call the plays, just to kind of change things up, and that was the thing I needed. He easily could have taken me out because Scott Campbell was ready to go, but he said, all right, I'm going to turn it to you. You're a senior. You deserve a second chance. And he said, I'm going to let you call the plays. And all of a sudden, it got to me where I'm going to, all right, I've got to make the decisions. I've got to make them work because I'm not playing very well. So all of a sudden I got into a rhythm, and then we pulled away and won by a fair margin. But that day really turned my year around and really gave me focus for the rest of the year, because the balance of the rest of the year I was able to call the plays most of the game, and it really was a great experience. As a quarterback, you always kind of want to run the show, and basically it was only in the 2-minute situation where you're able to really call your plays. But now it was I had to prepare during the week, and we'd meet, and he'd say, what are you thinking on 3rd and 4 and 2nd and 8 and those kinds of things. So we'd really kind of strategize. But when you're calling the shots, you're getting quick feedback from your guys coming back to huddle. Bart says, hey, I can beat him on outcut, or Ben McCall said, the guys turning me loose. Those things can be put into action pretty quickly by calling the next play. So it was fun. I enjoyed it. When I struggled, Jim Young would take it right back. He'd say, all right, that's enough. I'm taking this series. But it was a lot of fun, and something that doesn't happen very much today. Not many quarterbacks get to call the shots, but it was great.
Just think of that. You were an offensive coordinator. You didn't get offensive coordinator pay, and you were a 6.0 student I'm sure at that time. So you had all the time in the world to be able to spend all that film time getting ready. That's just perfect. Well, you were close to a 6.0. It was a 6.0 scale back when we were in school,
I used to say I was a 4.0 on a 6.0 scale.
I was closer from that standpoint. Looking at some of the top quarterbacks you've seen this year. Connor Cook, kind of at Michigan State, though, coming off of an injury, maybe just because he has some of the same stature that you have. But some of the guys that you've watched that you really that impress you around the league. J.T. Barrett, obviously a different type of quarterback than you were, certainly. But who do you see that really impresses you around the league?
I would agree. Connor Cook, he throws a nice ball. I think he's very accurate. I think he has kind of similar stature, and so I kind of identify with him a little bit. C.J. Beathard for Iowa has been pretty impressive.
Yeah.
So I like him. A guy a little bit off the radar, plays for the MAC and Bowling Green.
Yeah.
That guy, I think
Johnson,
Matt Johnson can really
Terrific.
spin it. Yeah, I love the way he throws the football. I love the way they attack, and he throws a great deep ball. So, there's a lot of guys in the Big 12 that we may not see as much as others that are pretty impressive, and they just put up monster stats with Baylor and TCU and Oklahoma State and those teams. But here in the Big 10, there's a lot of quality quarterbacks and some big games this weekend. Obviously in Columbus will be a big difference maker, but. I like Nate Sudfeld.
I do too.
I think he throws a really nice ball.
Does he? People talking about him as a guy that could be at the next level if he gets in the right situation.
Right situation, yeah. He doesn't have the big gun, but I think it's good enough, and he's a little bit slow, but I think there's a place for him, and I think he could make a roster possibly given that right situation. Maybe be a practice squad guy, but. If he stays with it and continues to produce, and you've got to take care of your opportunities in the preseason. You can't afford to have a bad situation. But I do. I think he's been very productive for Indiana, and like you and Kyle were talking, he's going to be tough to handle here in Ross-Ade in a few weeks.
Last question for you, and obviously the guy behind center for the Indianapolis Colts, which you were at one time, and follow that program as well, coming off an injury, but. Talk about what he, gone through early on in the season. Maybe a little bit of a slump, but a terrific talent in Andrew Luck, and yet what it might take for him to take that next step when he comes back from injury and can get the job done.
Yeah, it's been a frustrating campaign for Andrew, and it started early where he did not have great success, and he really has tried to do a little bit too much, and this offensive line has not been upgraded like maybe they should have, and so therefore he's suffered, and he's made some bad decisions. He's thrown into coverage, and instead of just letting things happen for him and just taking underneath stuff, he's still playing kind of in a function of Bruce Arians down the field kind of stuff. Well, this team maybe is not built the best way for that, so I think the fact that he was able to look at what Matt Hasselbeck did and instead two nice games, dumping the ball, getting rid of it, taking what they give you, I think that enabled him to kind of take a step back to see, okay, this is maybe how we need to operate this year's version of the Indianapolis Colts, because for them to be successful, he's got to be upright and not taking hits and holding that football, waiting for something to uncover. He's paying for it physically, and a lacerated kidney, I don't know how long this is going to last, but for his safety, he has got to alter his mindset to be able to just quickly get rid of it, and then the big plays happen. The more you start dinking and dunking, then you can go over the top. So I feel bad because he's a great competitor, terrific player, and terrific person. So I wish him well in this recovery period, and then when he comes back, we may see a new Andrew Luck.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to watch as that comes about, certainly. Mark Herrmann, pleasure to have you on so much. Thank you, and we'll look forward to hearing more from you. We'll make this an annual event, and we love to have you on, and we're glad Purdue is lucky to have you back at the university. It's a great thing to have some of its all-time greats there, and it's also fun because we can needle Bart Burrell now and then about that's like shooting fish in a barrel. All right,
stealing.
All right. We'll look forward to bringing Todd Foster on, and we'll talk about some great Purdue basketball memories, and also obviously Todd will be able to comment too about what he's seeing from the 2015-16 Boilermakers. We'll take a 2-minute break. Come back on Gold and Black Live.